Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
I am so happy to be talking to you a second time here for the second segment of this series. You guys have such good information, and I think honestly, when it comes to portals, vortexes, shapeshifters, dark adepts, I mean, these trickster cryptozoological entities, you have such a wide variety of knowledge, and you've been out in the field. You've got a couple of great websites. You're on YouTube. And let's talk about, well, where do we want to start off? Do we want to kind of talk about the manifestations of tricksters and like things like cryptids, elementals, werewolves? Where do we want to go?
Oh,
Well,
well, where do you want to go? I mean, it's really, yes, they ask the questions. What do you want?
what do you want? We can do it.
All right, let's get to something that really fascinated me in the first segment,
Okay.
which was the connection and communication with these entities in the Uinta Basin of Utah and Amadeus and Antioch. I'd like to kind of get into the phenomenal events that took place there. And did you notice a change around your house afterwards? I know that you guys have a portal there literally on your property. Did things change around your property?
Well, when we were living in Sandy, Utah, that was when we had gone to Skinwalker Ranch. I didn't notice that there was a big change because Michael and I, when we're together, we have we feel our home, our energy, our frequency, everything about us feels our home. He's master, I'm mistress. We are basically, when it's where we reside, we don't necessarily allow anything to come around. And I'm a stickler for that because that's my sanctuary. It's his sanctuary. I don't want anything messing with him or our animals. I know he doesn't either. And I become, I will fight if it comes to something coming around that I don't want around. So I don't allow it. I do a lot of protection. I do a lot of ceremony around every home that we've been at. And that's key to letting things know if they're allowed or not allowed. So when Antioch came, and that was unusual. Normally that doesn't happen in my home. But when I was younger, it did a lot because I didn't know how to stop it. But in our homes now, we don't have anything coming to visit except they'll be curious and check us out. But as far as cryptids, one thing I want people to know about cryptids, as far as I am concerned, is that especially with Sasquatch, they are so ready to communicate. They're friendly. They're respectful. Loki and another Sasquatch named Morja have always they've always communicated and just been just good friends. I haven't had any issue there. We've had an experience with a dog man who we have a photograph of the dog man, and that was in the Sandia Mountains in New Mexico on the outskirts of Albuquerque. And he made it clear to stay away from him, so we did. So when it comes to communication and anything that happens in any of these locations, no matter where you live, they'll know who you are by what you put out and what you allow to come towards you. So I think if people can understand that if you put out a lot of fear, they'll know that. If there's something a little negative, it'll come towards you maybe a little more aggressively. But Michael and I just don't allow that to happen where we are. You want to add to it?
Well, yeah, I think one of the most important takeaways that I always try to send out to people, I have done this for many years, is that you have to be fearless. You really do. And that doesn't mean you get up on top of a building and jump off.
No.
But you got to be fearless from the standpoint you got to confront these beings if they are negative. You really do. And that cuts off their power and that cuts off their ability. I can give you a quick story. When I lived in Georgia, it was a strange situation. I was kind of sitting there, and I can't tell you precisely what I was thinking, but it was something that they didn't like because somebody didn't like, entities didn't like, because it gave me power. It gave me something, and I didn't even know quite what it was. I believe it was something like this, Ryan. I was able to recognize or realize, and there's many people out there that do, is that maybe there isn't anything else. Maybe we just go to soil, just like a tree does or anything else. And it was just a fleeting thought. It was just strange. And suddenly I get this feeling, you need to come outside in the backyard. There's a problem out here. So I went outside. This is a home in Peachtree City, Georgia, a beautiful neighborhood. So I'm going outside, and there in front of me were three three beings. One was a reptilian, one was a gray, and one was something else. It was kind of a gray, but it was different than the one gray. The one gray is very typical looking, shorter, whatever. The other one may have been a tall white gray or something. But anyways, they were really unhappy with me because I was able to realize something, and they wanted to make sure I didn't realize. I didn't acknowledge this or realize this fact. And again, I'm not really expressing what that was because I don't remember exactly. Maybe they took it away from me. I don't know. But anyways, I just stood my ground, and I pretty much told them, no, come on, let's do it. I was like, one of these crazy standoff things. And the bottom line was, I wasn't fear. I wasn't. If I would have shown fear there, God only knows what would have happened to me. But you cannot have fear against these entities at all. That is so important. It's absolutely critical because there's a lot of them out there that will suck your energy.
Well, they'll use it against you.
Yeah, especially the reptilians. And we can go into the whole reptilian thing.
Oh, God. I had a horrible experience
Right.
in Utah with a reptilian man.
Right,
it was
right.
terrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they can use that against you.
Yeah, right. So you have to really be forceful. Humans are very powerful entities. All they have to do is realize they really are.
Yeah.
And they can hold their ground against any of this. And people don't realize that, and that's what they have to learn, I think. So, and there's many very good entities out there that are very helpful, very nice, blah blah blah. But there are some negative ones out there. There's no doubt in my mind.
My word, you are going. I swear you guys are looking at my notes because you're like literally going down the list perfectly. I'm wondering how, but I'm just.
Yeah, you wonder how, huh?
It's going perfectly, and I do want to. Whenever it gets time to talk reptilians, that's always something that interests thousands of people. And there's an amazing book called Voices from the Cosmos, who Doctors Scott Jones and Angela Thompson-Smith, they kind of went through these detailed transcripts of remote viewing telepathic interviews with a lot of these, exciting, but, cosmic neighbors, let's call them, and reptilians are among them. And I wanted to get into that. Angela Thompson-Smith, she's one of the founders of the International Remote Viewing Association, which I just participated in a conference with. So this is like fresh on my mind, and you guys are going right where I want to go. And I totally want to hear, Rainbow, what your experience was with this reptilian entity.
Well, I had two. Well, actually, I'm going to tell you something. I'll go back because I think this is key. Years ago, I went to Salt Lake City for a conference, and I decided I was going to go kind of walk the streets. It was like a long weekend, and I left the convention center, and I was walking around, and I walked to an area where there was like an underground parking lot. And I was walking towards that area, and I saw that there was a guard or some guy who was working there, but he looked more like a security guard, which I thought was a little odd, but I didn't know. I thought, well, probably he's just security, right? And so I'm walking down the sidewalk, and there was a long black limousine that was pulling up to where this guard was. And the guard turned and looked at me, and he seemed to panic. And the guy runs towards me, jumps over this wall. It wasn't very high. It was like 2 feet high. And he runs over to me. He says, no, 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 you cannot be here. You cannot be anywhere around here. You have got to go. He goes, and I said, well, I don't know where the downtown area is. I'm just lost. He goes, it's that way. So he pointed in another direction. And then the guy went over to, ran over, jumped the wall, and went back to his station. And I got really, really bad vibes from that limo. And I know without a shadow of a doubt there was reptilians in that limo. And I can't tell you why. All I can tell you is, and at this point in time, I had no experiences with reptilians, but I knew that those were reptilians. And the guy definitely didn't want me walking in that area. And I think he saved my life. I really, really do. So let's fast forward to this last experience. It was back in, my parents had died. My father died in 2019. My mom died 44 days later. COVID hit, so we had to wait to do the funeral stuff for my mom. And so Michael and I got a van here, and we drove, and we were helping my sisters clean out my parents' estate. And on our way back from doing that, we stayed again in Salt Lake City at a Hampton Inn. And it was a brand new Hampton Inn, and there was hardly anybody staying there. It was an odd day, because when we drove in, there was a whirlwind of dust, and how the winds were like 50 miles an hour. It was crazy. People were being knocked over. Michael saw a guy rolling on the ground because he fell over in his walker, and that's how strong the wind was. It was crazy. And so I'm trying to get into this hotel, and Michael's getting the luggage and stuff. And there was a very tall woman that I think was a transgender woman. But it had to have been 6'4", 6'5", very odd looking. Not for any reason of that nature. I'm just saying, I couldn't tell if who I was looking at was male or female, and had a very long jaw. And you had mentioned that this same person was very unusual. And so I said, oh my God, it's crazy outside. I said, how long has this been going on? And this person said, it's just begun. And I'm like thinking in my head, oh, you're full of baloney. I said, we drove in, and it's been happening for an hour and a half. What are you talking about? But when this person said that to me, they looked at me really funny. And I was like, whoa. And if I would have had my wits about me, but I was, still feeling the loss of my parents, I would have saw something more with the look. So Michael comes in with the luggage. We go to our room, we eat our dinner, and then we go to bed. Well, we're in bed, and it's about, I'd say after midnight. Mm-hmm. And I notice that there's something to the side of me, and I can't figure out what it is. But it was not a good thing. It was not a good feeling. And so it sat down on the bed, and it's trying to snuggle up against me. And I jump up, and I'm sitting up in bed, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I noticed that the water bottles in the room the pressure changed in the room, and they started popping. They were popping all over the place because I drink a lot of water. And so I was like, what is this? I go back to sleep, try to go back to sleep, and it gets under the covers with me and snuggles up against my back, and then I just flip out, and I'm telling Michael there's something in bed with us. And so third time, it's moving the blankets, and I just had enough. And I got out of bed. I said, enough. And I told Michael, I'm getting ready. It had to have been about 2:30.
It was mid. Yeah, right. 2:30.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So I get up. I go into the bathroom. I start getting myself ready, and I'm really tired at this point. But when I was in the bathroom, I was concerned about Michael because I knew this thing was going to start affecting him, and so he was tossing and turning in the bed because this thing was kind of its attention had turned to him. But what was really weird was when I was in the bathroom and I had the light on, I realized that I was safe in that bathroom because of the mirror. And I'll get to this in a moment, why the mirror might have been something that had saved me. But I noticed that when I was in the bathroom, there was a ton of noise in the hallway, like tons and tons of people. It was almost like a hallway full of, just like in a train station. It just tons of people. And I would walk out of the bathroom and then it would be silent, but Michael would be tossing and turning. I would come back into the bathroom and I'd hear all this noise again, and I would kind of be concerned about Michael, because I knew this thing was in the room, but I also know that Michael can handle himself. I knew that he could take care of business if he needs to. And so anyways, it was constant noise. I looked out the peephole of the door, because I thought there's a lot of people walking around, but we knew there weren't that many people who were staying at the hotel.
And it was 3 a.m.
It was 3 a.m, and nothing. There's nobody walking by, nothing. So anyways, Michael finally gets up, and so we got ourselves ready, and then we left. And at that point, I was just so relieved to get out of there. It was the first experience I've ever had as close to a demonic energy that I could come as close to. I mean, it was like almost to me like a demon. But after we got back home and I got my senses about me, I realized that it was reptilian. And the reptilian that was in the room was intrigued with Michael and I think, as a couple. But I think it was trying to, for some reason, it was attracted to me. And when I left and I went into the bathroom, it was changed its focus on Michael. And what was really interesting is we have a friend here who had a reptilian experience, and he saw this old woman in a mirror, and in the mirror he saw her transform into a reptilian, a 7-foot reptilian. And the female turned to him and got really angry at him, because it knew that he saw it as its true form. And I know that being in the bathroom with the mirror, because I instinctively felt safer that this thing wasn't going to come into the bathroom with me, because it would have shown its true self. And I think that the reptilian didn't want to show its true self, but it was just kind of messing with Michael and I. And so when I realized this, I kind of understood that a lot of the area, I believe, around the Salt Lake City, kind of the Sandy area as well, and all the other little suburbs, that there's a lot of underground stuff happening with aliens, with the reptilians. And I think that when we came in, that person that was at the counter, I think, was actually reptilian. And that explained everything, because reptilians can change to male to female, whichever way they want. And I realized that what I was looking at was actually in the human form, or the image they wanted to give across as a human. So that was one of the experiences that we had that was reptilian.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, the reptilians, I can't honestly tell you I run into any good reptilians. When the reptilians in the area, or they're in your face, there isn't going to be a good conversation. I'm going to be honest with you. I wish I could tell you there was. There's all kinds of other beings. I've been around mantis and, grays and just a variety of other ones. And most of those all Palladians, most of those all come across pretty reasonable. But the reptilians are innately aggressive, and they just extremely, and you just got to really be careful around them. You just hope you don't run into them, generally speaking, to be honest with you.
And Salt Lake, it's not the good guys. And Salt Lake City, it's so interesting that you had your experience there, because that exemplifies a ton of close encounters that have taken place in downtown Salt Lake City. They're there used to be a mall there called
Yep.
Crossroads Plaza. Yeah, you guys
That's
probably.
That's
probably
the
where
parking-
I was. Yeah, yeah.
That's the
yeah.
by the way, I'm glad you remember. I was trying to say I was going to call it Cottonwood. I know it wasn't Cottonwood,
No,
but
that's-
you know they rebuilt this big beautiful mall down there, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. But anyways, what I was going to tell you is that underground parking area that I believe Rainbow was talking about, I had heard some really amazing things that some people have seen, and this is when I worked for the Olympics there. People would bring up the thing that they don't want to go down there because they ran across stuff coming. They said coming through the wall, and they didn't. First of all, most of them didn't believe it, but it was, and a lot of times they described it as kind of a reptilian type look. And they said we would never go down in that parking garage anymore. Now I don't even know if that exists anymore. They may have gotten rid of that particular one. But they've all, there's all these caverns underneath.
Catacombs.
Catacombs. Yeah.
That too.
Yeah, underneath that whole Utah.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
and that's a documented thing. That isn't like something I'm making up.
Yeah.
That's known, and that's also one of the reasons supposedly, they have an earthquake fault that goes right through there, and it's a big deal. Someday they will have a huge earthquake there.
Yeah, it is. That's a good observation because that Crossroads Mall, like you said, when they excavated that, I had also heard some of these stories through a mutual friend of mine named Dave Rosenfeld. He's the guy that started the Utah UFO Hunters, and he had people contact him about seeing these interdimensional parasite, reptilian-looking
That's it.
predators going through walls, and they were in some pretty rough emotional states after viewing them.
Right.
Oh yeah, the energy from this thing affected me for 2 weeks, and for me, my Achilles heel is the Exorcist thing. I was 13 when The Exorcist came out, so I don't like the demonic possession stuff. I can't watch that, and so for me, this was as closest I got to that, where this thing I could feel it touching me, and getting under the covers with me, and but when I realized what it was, I was slightly relieved because I can see how people can think reptilians are demons because of how they look. I totally get that. But what was really interesting about this is when that person said to me, "It's just begun." And so that's when if you pick up on certain things that people say to you or entities say to you, they will give you a heads up that you need to be careful. And if I would have been on my game, I would have looked at that person and I would have, said, "Hey, we're in for it tonight, Michael. We gotta keep our heads up." But I didn't even think about it because I was not in a very good place. But they know that, they can sense that, and even as an empath, you, no matter what's going on in your life, you still have to keep your sense of protection up, and that's the most important thing. Whenever we go to Utah, man, my radar's up, my protection's up, and I don't relax until we get through it.
Yeah, one of the other things I wanted to mention, I did the Olympics there, as I probably told you, but one of the things I've had actually people that I hired from other parts of the country to come out and do the Olympics there, and a couple of them actually ended up leaving fairly quickly. And one of the reasons they gave, and they didn't give it in this term, but what the bottom line was, they had a psychic attack. There's been people that I've known that came from outside of Utah, came to Utah to do something, and they get these psychic attacks where they just completely think they're going to lose their mind if they don't get out of there, and they feel this very powerful presence.
Well, what did we do when we left?
What are you talking about?
Well, Ryan, when we left Utah to come here to Oregon, we were paranoid that we weren't going to get out.
Yeah.
We were, I actually stepped off these steps in the house that we were renting, and I actually fell over. And usually Michael's very considerate, but he's looking at me. He's like, Rainbow, can you get up? Just get up. We got to go. We have to leave. And I'm like, trying to get myself up off the ground. I'm like, I can get up. And we were just literally felt like we were not going to get out.
Yeah.
We just didn't think, we just felt like something was trying to keep us there.
Keep us there. Yeah.
And it was like a stupid, crazy mind screw idea, but we really felt it because you can feel it in your whole being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
You guys are dead on when you said that there's tunnels underneath. I mean, this has been verified for a long time. This was kind of a secret. But there was a guy named, what was his name? Gisbert Bossard, I think was his name. And he gained access to these tunnels and took a bunch of pictures of every nook and cranny of their interior. And this was a long time ago. This was in 1910 or 11.
Wow.
And I mean, since then, they've obviously added to it, but they've expanded over time. And there have been mentions of tunnels to the ZCMI Center, the Conference Center, the Genealogical Center, the City County Building. I mean, they go out in all directions under the temple,
Sure.
the Mormon Temple. And as you know, the Mormon Temple was right across the street from this Crossroads Mall.
Exactly.
Yeah, right in the middle of town. So you guys are, I mean, that's confirmation in my opinion. And it's intriguing and kind of mysterious for sure.
Yep.
There's a sketchy. I remember I went to a conference. I believe it's called the Peary Hotel, and they took us after the conference down into the basement at one point, and they showed us tunnels. And when we said, "Where do these go?" they said these function to kind of gain access to wherever you need to go downtown, but just underground. So that was. I mean, I'm comfortable in saying that was miles from the temple. So just to add a little mystery to your story, it's verified. I mean, you guys are not kidding. This is a real thing.
Yeah.
Definitely is a real thing. I mean, it's Utah was quite an experience for us. We had all kinds of, we talk about it. We talk about our experience with the Giants. We talk about our Dugaway experience. We just had a whole bunch of experience.
Succubus.
Yeah, we've had all kinds of crazy things happen there. It was I don't want to call it a hot spot. I don't like to use that term, but it's sort of a hot spot when it comes to a variety of different paranormal type things. And I think we were there a couple years. The second time when I did the Olympics, it was about a couple years too. Although I was pretty much preoccupied with the Olympics, and I didn't, I wasn't out exploring as much as I would have liked to. But the second time around with Rainbow, we got out there and we did our stuff. We were out there doing our things, and we were getting all kinds of interesting stuff.
And I'm really glad that you guys mentioned the psychic ability to know that these things, to have that feeling, that intuition, that intrigues me because, I mean, remote viewing is starting to be something that is accepted, even in the mainstream media a little bit. But it's been clandestine for so long, and it's pretty well-known fact that, that the military has utilized, these remote viewers or psychic spies with psychic abilities for everything from the Iran hostage crisis to the Chernobyl disaster, the Gulf War. These are very real things. When these papers and documents get declassified and people realize, oh, how did you guys find out that this was taking place there? And you say, oh, it was a remote viewer. This knocks the average citizen kind of on their butt. But as you're aware, this is a very real thing. And I wanted to kind of get into how you can psychically know when you're near like portals or vortexes. It seems like the Earth's surface has these mysterious areas with mystical energies and vibrations, and how do you know, what enables you to know when you're near one of these? You mentioned dowsing before. Are there any other methods, Mike and Rainbow? Well,
yeah, I mean, another one that comes to mind is having an animal with you, like a dog. If you suspected there was an area, and I'm getting this from Kiwani more than anything, but he claims this works. He said he'll go to an area and he may douse it, but he's never, that's not 100%, okay? So what he would do, though, he would sit close to that area and watch his dog. Because the dogs and maybe other animals, but dogs are ones that are, walking around with you typically. He said if you just watch them, and they will actually watch, if there is a portal close by, they will actually see beings and things moving in and out of them, and they will follow them with their heads moving a certain way and back. And he says it's just kind of beyond. It's not a normal thing. Whatever you're seeing them do with their eyes and their head is absolutely abnormal, and that's what he determines. When he used to have a dog, what was his name? I don't remember. Well, anyways, it was his famous dog that would go to these portal areas with him, and then he would watch them. So, anyways, dogs. But also, I believe that the camera, at the same time, just like this, like I would go to a portal area, and he would, douse for me, and then I would take the pictures. And I have a feeling that dogs and the ability of a digital camera are kind of the same of one. So the dog was the other way in which I knew if you took a dog with you, they would probably see something going on in a portal area.
Well, and Loki, who is my Sasquatch contact, told me a lot about portals. And he told me that when light is stretched, and if you ever go hiking around any mountain areas, it can, desert, whatever, and if you ever get the sense, a slight dizziness, where you don't have that center of balance, and then you see the sun coming through. The Native Americans are really famous for this because they can sense anything, anywhere. They can tell when something's a mile away. They can just sense and see how the forest is actually reacting to it. But when it comes to a portal, nature tells you and shows you different ways of, even if you don't have a camera or a dog around you. Loki said, look at how light is stretched. Look at and see how the light is coming through the trees. He said that you'll get this slight dizzy feeling that like a funhouse effect, kind of like that. And then he said that animals react to portals because they don't want to go through them. Because, this accidentally fly through one, who knows where they're going to end up. So animals react to them, and you'll find an area where it's a little bit more quiet than the other areas, and it's not because it's hunted down or something. There's always something predatory around. It's the animals sense and know where not to be. So you can always sense by where the animals are, where if you hear a lot of birds, if you don't hear birds. I mean, we've walked the rainforests here and heard nothing, and we've looked and seen that either there's two reasons for that. It's because there's a predator around. It could also be it could be cryptids as well, or it can be a portal.
Right.
And there's a lot more portals in the forest areas, smaller ones, than people tend to realize. And I think that's why sometimes people end up missing, is I think some people just accidentally find these things and they just walk through them. But there's warning signs for it, which has to do with how you feel. And it's just being aware of your surroundings. And Loki said, just remember how light stretches. And you're looking at about a football field away from a portal, it'll start stretching. Because the portal's going to kind of pull in to the light from the planet. So wherever the portal opens up to and goes to, the light will reflect into that and just go into that, and it'll affect the gravity around the area as well. So that's the one thing that he told me that you can look out for, because he knew that Michael and I do a lot of hiking. He just wanted us to be a little bit more careful about where we go.
Yeah, it's mysterious energy, and I'm so glad, Rainbow, that you brought up these vibrations, like when the ground feels like it's moving.
Yeah.
That happens a lot at this base camp known as Space Wolf Research. And I wanted to ask you a question, because a lot of times people will kind of get that vertigo feeling. They'll say, do you feel that? It feels like the ground is moving. Maybe it is. I don't know. I've considered it. But others have mentioned that this could be times when the area or these portals or vortexes could be acting as doorways that might allow something to traverse time or move through or come from beyond beyond the veil, or vice versa. Have you had any experience with that, or do you know if there's any truth to that?
Well, every time that there's anything going through a portal, it affects everything around the portal on this side and obviously the other side. So yes, so the vertigo feeling easily can be something coming out of the vortex or the portal or going into it. It could be whoever's using the portal. It can be all the above. So I think that specifically at Skinwalker Ranch, because that is high traffic portal, that the reason why there's so many things happening there is because things are always coming and going, and we can't always see them with obviously our eyes. They can pick stuff up off, digitally or with, their cameras they have out there. And obviously when there's stuff happening, you'll see a lot of UFOs around that area. But you're going to find that when there's an area that is used a lot, that is going to affect the surrounding area. And you're going to feel the funhouse effect. You're going to feel ill. There's some people who have actually not felt well at all for no reason. And then all of a sudden they feel okay. And that's another, it affects you physically as well, and it can make you sick. And for me, it's a pressure on the top of my head. If I feel a lot of pressure on the top of my head and in the back, I know that I'm close to a portal or something like that, because it's the pressure is pushing in on my brain, and I can feel it. So I think there's so much to that. When there's a lot of traffic going and coming from these portals, obviously it's going to affect the outside area by the portal.
Okay. And I wanted to ask you, we kind of touched on it, nature spirits, and especially these water spirits, which are often associated with running water, creeks, waterfalls, etc. And the strange phenomena known as water babies. Have you ever encountered any water spirits or anything of that nature, or heard any good stories about these water babies and why it's a good idea not to go towards them?
Ooh.
You go first?
Well, I believe I've seen, at various, in the past, when I lived, especially when I lived in Georgia, I used to go up and I used to take people up there to do a little looking for Sasquatch or communicating with Sasquatch. And we'd mainly do this through meditation, okay? And anyways, but that's a separate subject. But we'd go up there and there was these small little waterfalls. And some of the people up there, I always remember talking about it, about these, well, I don't know if they call them elementals is what they call them. And some of them actually told me that they didn't like being around some of them. Some of them loved it. Some of them thought it was terrific. Some of them said, I'm not that happy about that. And they usually stayed back a little bit when they saw them. I don't, waterfalls are really great because they have a lot of positive, I think it's the negative ions are produced by waterfalls. And not negative meaning in a negative way, but it's something that we really, really enjoy. So the tendency is to go by a waterfall for a human because it leaves them with good feelings, real good feelings. Actually, we
had an experience of that.
We just had an amazing experience in Washington State where we trekked up kind of a small mountain and ran into this amazing waterfall. It was right in our face, literally in our face, and the energy was so powerful.
Oh, huge.
You just could not believe it. But I can't say we saw any water babies or any water elementals, but that was sort of all I can really tell you on that subject. Rainbow, did you have something?
Yeah, I've heard of, I didn't have any experiences, but I was told to be careful because, and we actually have taken photographs on vortex photography of streams, and you can see the faces in the stream, and you can see the little water babies looking up at you. And because my understanding is that they're more the fae, the fae folks, the fairy folks, that their tendency is to lure humans in. And so even if you look at the pagan term of the different types of fairies that there are, and we have books on fairies because we have fairy circles around our yard, we know that these little water baby, these little, I call them fairy folk, that they'll lure people into the water And that's why you have to be really, really careful with your children, because children are, from what I understand, are who they prefer. So you have to hang with the kids when you're around specific streams. I'm not saying these water babies are everywhere, but I know that when I, in my early 20s, I realized that when I was talking to different Native American medicine men and women, that they said there's always things in nature ready to lure you, away. And fairies have never left the forest, so that's the closest I've come to as far as with the fae.
You there, Ryan?
Yep, just lost you for a minute there. Don't know what happened.
Okay, that's all right. No problem.
So you were saying, sorry to circle.
Oh.
Okay, let's see. Go ahead and, are you going to call?
Yes. Oh, he's calling. I'll answer it.
There you go. Just answer it.
I don't know how to answer it. It does it that way.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
Yep. You.
80151.
It's still. Something much better. Just having a little problem here with the phone.
Yeah, we talked about the.
Interesting. We start talking about the weird things and it cuts us off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
The phone is normally, Ryan, not anything we have a problem with. It's usually the internet or something
Yeah.
else. I think the phone, that's just really strange.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So just to circle back, you were saying to keep that kind of concerns me because you.
Did you take that off?
No, it was 100%.
Are you there?
Ryan, you there?
Yeah, you shouldn't have taken that off.
No, it has nothing to do with it. Yeah.
Is not available.
Oh, no.
At the tone, please record your message. When you finish,
Yeah, he's calling. Get the phone on. Okay.
your call has been forwarded to an automated voice message.
Okay, we're going to do this. And we're going to.
So we're just having a problem with Ryan here.
Your call has been forwarded to an
Okay, just let him call. So we're going to have a little gap in here. We'll be waiting for Ryan to call us back because we don't really know
The
what happened.
little fairy folks.
Yeah, I guess we were talking about something we shouldn't be talking about, and so we've been disconnected because we've been using our cell phone to communicate with Ryan. So you just have to bear with us. This may be in the video. I would assume it will be, but that's all right. You just have to wait.
Your call has been forwarded.
All right.
Okay, just let him call. So
Okay.
I really
I'm going
can't
to keep
shut
it out.
off.
Yeah.
Hello there.
There we go.
Okay, just
Sorry about that. So
No,
okay,
it's all
so
right.
basically all I was saying is that my mom basically encountered some stuff out there with me, and she said you cannot bring your toddlers out here because there is a little waterway, and we encountered some high strangeness, and she immediately said, and so that kind of emphasizes what you were saying. My mom just kind of said, don't bring the kiddos out here, and I think she has a point.
No, your mom is right on the money because children, especially if it has to do with these particular types of fairies, they're more attractive to this type than adults are. So, and I've just learned that when it comes to kids, you got to hang with them around the streams. And I knew when I was young, when I would go fishing with my dad, that I had this innate sense that I had to be really careful and just keep my dad in view, because I just had this sense that something else was watching me. And I think there's something to that. I think as we got to just watch for our kids, and then also as children, we have a sense about it as well.
So Ryan, it's interesting you brought this up, because I just did a video, maybe it's been a month or so ago, on this exact subject, but I did it because somebody from India that was viewing our channel became kind of a loyal watcher, and she wanted us to do a video on a particular place in India where it's in fact this kind of thing we're talking about is really big in India, because they believe that there's spirits in the water. They'll actually grab the children, and there's been even some fairly documented incidents where children were grabbed. They don't always die or drown, but many of them do. And they actually see these things in there, and they could be whatever they
they
want
are.
to call spirits, and they pull the kids in, and the adults have happened too, and they just can't figure out they shouldn't have drowned in the shallow water, like they grab them. But this is something that's been going on for a long time, so it's kind of interesting you kind of went in this direction. But I had done a video very similar, like I said, recently.
That is so interesting, Mike, because I recently went to investigate some stuff in a part of Utah near what's known as Parawan. And just in looking at, what the name means in the Native American name meaning of Parawan is evil water.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is so interesting that this kind of comes about like that. And something I wanted to ask you that we touched on just for a moment, which really intrigued me, was the Bigfoot portal jumper. That really stood out to me. Can you tell us a little bit more about that situation and scenario? Because I believe, and I know a lot of others believe, that these entities, these Sasquatch and Bigfoot, I mean, I've seen it happen where you'll, for all intents and purposes, have it cornered, treed, whatever, and it disappears. So I really want to hear more about this dimensional aspect of the portal jumper Bigfoot situation.
Well, Loki, when he came to me, he made contact with me when I first came out here with Michael, and he's here in Oregon, and he made it very clear to me that he's a portal jumper. And as a matter of fact, the next time that I had seen Loki, I'd seen him in Michael's his middle daughter's house, and we came out for
Christmas?
No, I think it was after Christmas.
Okay.
But what Loki had told me is that there are different groups of Sasquatch. There are Sasquatch that are actually born here on the planet,
Terrestrial.
and they they have different. They have a winter location and a summer location, and then there's Sasquatch like Loki, and Loki's group aren't the tallest of Sasquatch. He's about I'd say he's about 8 feet tall. There's some that are 12, 13, higher, really, really tall. And in fact, Warja, who's a female Sasquatch here that made contact with me, I think she's probably 10. She's taller than Loki. But Loki's specific job, what he does is he's a portal jumper. And what portal jumpers do, they actually, they go different locations on the planet. And he told me his job is basically to make sure everything is okay. And they actually, when there's fires, like there are fires out here in Oregon, their job is to help Sasquatch get away from the fires. They can pull them through. He said that the portal jumpers just have this ability to figure out which trees are. I think it has to do with how they're spaced. They have this innate ability just to be able to portal jump through them. And I was trained when I was young, and I was shown with the aliens how to create a portal jump as a child. So I understood kind of what Loki was talking about, because it's not so much just the trees, it has to do with the Sasquatch themselves. They have the ability to actually create the portal along with the trees. And so he was just showing me in my mind's eye actually what happens once they jump. And he showed me what was inside the portal, and that's a whole other story. But what he basically said that there's different types of Sasquatch, and his particular group are the portal jumpers, and they help out. They actually work with Dogman. They are familiar with other cryptids, and they go into other realities and dimensions, and they bring back information. They work with different alien groups. That's kind of what they do.
Okay. And kind of circling back to it's something that I know is very, very interesting in the Southwest, which is kind of back to this well-researched stuff covered in the book, The Hunt for the Skinwalker. It presented a lot of interesting findings and confirmed a lot of things that people like yourselves already knew. And I wanted to ask you if in your travels and in your research, in your explorations, I've heard of the curses and, the belief that the Nagloshi can, basically it's said that if you look in the eyes or if you look at them directly that they have to kill you. I've heard, you hear this often in like Hillerman's books and other books that go into curses. But I'm wondering, have you ever come across any personal accounts of these 3-day curses or 333-day curses or any of these situations where you've heard from someone you know or somebody that knows somebody that you know of these? Because I know that that's a big deal in Native American lore.
Are you talking about looking at a skinwalker or looking at a Sasquatch or looking at who?
Yeah, like directly in the eyes. Yeah.
You're talking about a skinwalker.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, a skinwalker. Okay. Well, with the skinwalker, that's a whole other animal because the skinwalker depends on how they were created. So a lot of people, I mean, I'm one of those people that I want to kind of see how things start off from the very beginning to how they became what they are. And so my understanding is that to be a skinwalker, it's not just the fact that you are, a negative or dark medicine man. It's also that you have to do certain things, and you have to be initiated into that particular type of dark sorcery. So when that happens, that means that there's another skinwalker that's training you and showing you how to do what you do. And so when you look at these particular dark sorcerers is what I call them. And what I know, and I had this actually, I think I dealt with one in the New Mexico area in Taos, actually, is that you have to be confident enough in your ability to fight them off or fight off whatever it is, and you have to take them on. You cannot backtrack. You can't say, you have to just put the line in the sand and just say, I'm light, I'm the warrior of light, and you just have to be able to have that mindset that you're going to fight them. And that's what Thunderbolt taught me. But when the average person goes out there, and I'm just saying somebody who isn't studying in the Native American way, looks at them. These things can sense and know your Achilles heel. They'll know the things that you're afraid of. They'll know the different things in your lives. They have that ability to go into the mind. And I think that people help them out by taking on these stories of what these things are able to do. Now, I'm not saying dark magic doesn't happen, but what I'm saying is that it depends on what type of skinwalker it is. If it's a dark shaman who's taken on another dark shaman's medicine, see, in the Native American way, and I've met very powerful medicine men who did amazing and wonderful things. They're the good guys, who they are trained by their benefactors, and when their benefactor dies, they take on their medicine pouch. They take on their medicine way. Same thing happens with a skinwalker. They're trained by someone who's their benefactor, and their benefactor, if they pass on, or but Skinwalkers can live for a long time, but they'll take on some of the medicine of their benefactor. It just depends on what kind of Skinwalker it is. I mean, it's not like we were stating earlier, there's a lot of gray area here. It just depends, or you could just have a dark witch who shapeshifts, who's getting into that aspect of Skinwalker. It depends on who you're dealing with. Each case is entirely different. I don't think there's a broad curse that takes on for everybody, but I think you have to be very careful. And the one thing that I do know is that you have to respect what is in the darkness. That doesn't mean that you acquiesce to it and that you let it take over. It just means you gotta understand what's in the darkness to know how to fight it. And if you don't know, then you stay away from those kind of people. If you by accident happen to see these things, you just ignore them. So if I see, for instance, if I've in the past when I experienced what I believe was a Skinwalker, I had no choice but I had to face it. I wasn't given a choice. The situation occurred where I had to face this and I had to fight it. So in that type of situation, you got to do it. But if you don't have to, I truly believe, pick your battles, and if you don't need to fight, then don't do it.
Yeah.
I've had enough trial and error. I've come so close to dying that especially by one particular witch, that I know this by trial and error. But if you're not familiar with this area, the best thing to do is just to don't look. If you sense somebody is not a good person, don't look at them. Just don't do it. But on the other hand, I think it depends on who it is. I know that doesn't, I don't think I answered your question, but for me, it's not an easy, broad answer question to answer, is what I'm saying.
No, I agree. Considering the proportion of the question, I think you did a really good job. I really do. And that makes perfect sense because it is the conceptions that most people think of. And, I've heard a lot of stories from Tuba City, Black Mesa, Shiprock, and I know that you guys have too.
Yeah.
And, there is a lot of remarks that are kind of frequent that you hear when it comes to direct questioning of some of these things. And they're basically, like, as you said, try to avoid it at all costs. And so I think that's especially useful.
Oh, yeah.
And, another question I had while we're on the subject, and this is particularly apt to be like the witchery way subject, or is that I've noticed that most older people wear medicine pouches and at gatherings, and I've often been told that it's particularly for these types of exceedingly as you get older, your health isn't what it used to be, and it just goes to show that it is very real. To some cultures it is not. If you talk to a millennial, just your standard millennial, they may not believe as much as some of the older individuals in the tribes, but it is still a very, very logical and real concern.
Yes, and the medicine pouch is it symbolizes many things. It symbolizes your medicine, what you specialize in, what you can do. It also has your protection in there. So if there's certain things that I love, that I have with me that I think are necessary, and I particularly love tiger eye, so I'll take that with me. I think it's an important stone to carry around with me. And there's other herbs you can take. I think it's important to carry sage with you as well. And so I think different people will have different things in their medicine pouches. But I think it's also a sign. It's also an outside, it's like your dress, like what you're wearing. It's showing whoever is out there, if you're going to a powwow, if you're going to some type of ceremony, if you're going to any of the festivals that happen in September at the different reservations, especially in New Mexico, you're letting whoever know that you're aware of what's going on around you. so that there's no question, are you a believer or a non-believer type of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's very informative, and it is, getting back to like the cryptozoological aspect. It's such interest to me. It's just so interesting to me, the destructive and how many cases there are, and situations with law enforcement that just cannot be explained. I've spoken with Bureau of Indian Affairs officers on multiple occasions, and when it's off the record, these definitions come out. Their special knowledge of what is taking place. When you talk to them, generally they're not going to say it. But if you have a good conversation with them at length, it's one of those things that if you're out here enough, you eventually see these things.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
you do. Most definitely you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a story, Ryan, if you want me to talk about my story in Gallup.
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely, Mike.
So anyways, I told you we had this group. It was the New Mexico UFO Paranormal Forum, and we would bring in speakers from all around, mainly the Southwest, but other parts of the country. But one time, this wasn't a speaker. This was somebody who had come in the audience, okay? And after it was all over, we usually take out the speaker, which I don't even know what the speaker was speaking about on that particular day. Probably something related to that, because otherwise maybe she wouldn't be there. Because I believe she was a Native American, almost certain, but I ain't going to tell you for sure. But she had worked, I think she was retired, and she was a dispatcher over in Gallup, New Mexico. So she heard a lot of stuff, right? So anyways, so she wanted to, we usually take the speaker out to a little dinner, and afterwards, I think she ended up sitting next to me. So she wanted to talk to me about this incident that had happened years before. So the way it all went down is she got a call that some kids were really in distress, and they were at a convenience store about 15 miles north of Gallup. And they were apparently the owner or whoever was there at the counter. They came in, they said they thought, I think they probably said actually it looked like a skinwalker. It was off the side of the road. It was very scary and, stuff like that. And so the person who was behind the counter happened to be a Native American, because that whole area is, I believe, mainly a Navajo type area, right? So anyways, they were very much into this. And so the person behind the counter took it very seriously and dialed up the police there locally, and she got the call, right? So she's taking all this notes down, and she's being very serious about it. So she dispatches 2 officers up that road, and I think what happened was they didn't stop at the convenience store. I don't believe they did. They actually went past the convenience store, because that's where the teenagers said they saw this thing off to the side of the road. So sure enough, they go up this road, and they see something on the side of the road just kind of standing there. And I think the way they described it was kind of a lanky, somewhat hairy kind of creature that had a humanoid face, and maybe some hair, long hair, but some of the body was more hairy than they expected. And it was standing next to the road, so they weren't quite sure at this point what was what. So they stopped. It just kind of stared at them, and they went by it, and then they turned around, and they started coming back because they wanted to take another look because it was still there, right? So they went back. They drove very slowly. And then it kind of was looking at their direction, and suddenly it kind of made a jerky turn towards them, and it really spooked the 2 officers. So I guess they said, let's go. Because they were natives, and they understood that if it's some skinwalker or some other type of entity, probably don't want to hang out here. We can come back and look at it later, but we're going to bring an army this time or something. You know what I'm saying? They knew that whatever it was not maybe good. So anyways, they started pedaling, they started putting the pedal to the metal, pedal to the floor, whatever you want to call it, and they started booking down towards town, towards back to Gallup, right? So all of a sudden, here this thing comes. It's like on its force, and it's galloping kind of right behind them. And they said that they got at least to 70 or 80 miles an hour. And this thing was still gaining on them. This thing was going, they said they could not believe the speed this thing was moving, right? And so they're freaking out, and they're on the phone, they're on the radio to this dispatcher. And they're giving the blow by blow. That's how she knew it, basically. So here they're coming, and they think this thing's going to catch them. All of a sudden, they got to the city limits. And again, here was another example where I guess having all that residential, etc. there, this thing just did one of these numbers on a dime, just turned to the left. It was going probably, the same speed they were at this point. And it just turned on a freaking dime, and they said it just went into the woods. And they never saw it again. Thank God, they said.
Oh, yeah.
But they absolutely thought it was a skinwalker, some kind of a demon or whatever. It definitely was something to behold. And they never forgot it. I think one of the guys was about ready to retire in a couple of years. He just retired. That was as simple as that. The other guy was a younger guy. He apparently stayed on, she said, but he never forgot that story. They actually drove back in, of course, into the police station, and they got together with the chief and the police chief. And I don't think she was in the room, but she already knew everything that went on. And they hashed it out. And later on, she talked to the chief, and he told her, you heard what you heard. There's probably a lot to it, but let's kind of keep it among us. He was just trying to keep it under control. She did tell me why she told me. I don't know, but it was years later. It wasn't 2 years ago. She had already retired, so she didn't feel so bad about telling that story, and she didn't give me any names or anything. But I thought it was an incredible story. And you're absolutely right. These, I think they call them Rangers, the Navajo Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
They have got some amazing stories. Always the question is with the Native Americans, it's very hard for a white person to sit down and talk to them directly. They do not want to do that. I understand why. I mean, I can tell you a story that I had the great pleasure of having work for me in Albuquerque, the great-grandson of Sitting Bull. And it took me literally years to give him a feeling that I was a decent person and that he would start relating some amazing stories about his reservation and all kinds of stuff up there. And this is way up in the Dakotas. But anyways, it was. I thought it was an amazing story. I never forgot it. I think I got most of the details pretty much right on. But it affected her for a long time. She never forgot the details either. But that's what happens when you have those profound experiences. They're embedded in you forever.
Right.
You do not
forget
it. You just don't.
Man, and there's so many cases, and as you mentioned, so many similarities in a lot of these stories.
You're right.
Exactly.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I had the blessing of, I went to a conference, kind of not really a conference, kind of a get-together of like-minded people up in Cedar City, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you're not kidding. These Navajo Rangers, I believe it was Jonathan Dover and some of his friends, this was absolutely amazing. The evidence that they would pick up at some of these crime scenes where these dark adepts were doing their thing. And I mean, there's no other way, there's no other box you can really put this in. And to kind of exploit the whole law enforcement angle of this, and this is kind of going out on a limb, have you guys come across any strange Men in Black sightings or Men in Black stories?
You talking about personal ones?
Yeah, or have you heard of any? I've heard of a few of where people will go to a certain area and they'll encounter these things that I mean, I hate to put it in the Men in Black category because it's such a big category, right?
Sure, right.
But these blacked out Suburbans and this,
right.
If they see something, then getting questioned by non-official federal agents, or I forget what the term is.
Ryan, let me just say something. I mean, maybe in the future we could just do one on Men in Black, because I personally have my own personal experiences. We've had, there's been some not anything that came to our door here, but neighborhood, a lot of people in this neighborhood we live in now had a strange encounter. I would consider Men in Black.
And I grew up with them.
Yeah, and Rainbow grew up with them. So you want to hear some stuff of them. We have Men in Black stuff we can definitely talk about. But I think what will happen, we probably have to get going on this one to finish this one up. We can, it's an open offer in the future. We can do a Men in Black one if you want to. We have plenty of information on that, and we believe very much in the Men in Black.
Yeah.
And it's such a big subject. It's probably best to tackle it like it deserves an episode by itself.
Oh yeah. And
because there's not one type of Men in Black.
Right.
There's 3 different groups.
Right, exactly. And
so you have to figure out which ones are we talking about and what their specific their goals are and what they do.
Right. And we talk about Men in Black. Let's also talk about Women in Black.
Yeah.
Okay, because we got both of those going on. And anyways, so without too much more said, sometime in the future we can do just one episode on that, because I think there's so much material we have on that, and some of it is, to say the least, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's going to have to be a requirement for sure.
Okay.
You guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on. You have such investigative talent, and you are such serious paranormal researchers. I love what you're doing with dimensional walking, and I absolutely love your website. Can you tell our listeners where they can keep up with your videos, your YouTube posts, see your photographs, etc.?
Sure. Dimensional Walking, a Paranormal Journey is the YouTube channel. And then the website has been out longer, that has maybe 1,800 to 2,000 posts on it, has a lot of the photographs on it. We're not tech savvy enough to put the photographs with our
Not yet.
with our channel.
Sorry.
So we always have to reference. People get real mad at us. They have to reference
Bunch
back
of old
to
farts. We can't figure it out.
We have to reference to go back to the the website, and there are my Vortex photography is. There's plenty of it on there. So anyways, that is Truth Seeker Forum. That's the website. And then Rainbow writes for, go ahead, Rainbow.
I write for a paranormal magazine called Paranormal Underground, and you can find them at www.paranormalunderground.net. And they're Chad and Cheryl Knight are the publishers, and they're pretty cool people. So I write for them, and there's a lot of great writers in the magazine. Everything, like we just talked about, everything under the sun in the magazine. So if you want to see what I write, you can check out the magazine.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you so much. And if you're ever up in Utah, reach out to me. Let's see if we can't get a trip out there to Space Wolf Research and get you at the base camp. And let's talk again soon. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.